Welcome to Sports Scope, the most influential sports talk show in the nation.
What is today, the 19th?
Stay tuned for updates and great sports content.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sports Scope. I'm your host, Robert Butler, on this 14th day of September. We're almost till Friday, folks. And hey, listen, I want to thank everybody who has reached out about friends at work and everything about yesterday's program. I want to thank you for that. It was a good show. I thought it was pretty good. I'm not really a theme guy. Sometimes you'll see me have a show like yesterday, and other times you'll see me go over more of a traditional show, very hybrid type of sports show. But I do that because certain things that I just know that the mainstream media cannot and will not talk about. And those topics like yesterday, stuff is like that is what separates me from the others, Today's going to be more of a traditional show. I've got fantasy talk. I've got Deion Sanders. Man, Deion Sanders and Colorado, they're turning into the villains of the sports. I'll tease that, okay? We'll go ahead and take our telling it like it is. Thank you, Pickles. I took truth serum, man. I can't help it. I get no respect. Channel a little inner Rodney Dangerfield. So we'll go ahead and take our first and only break. We come back. I'm going to touch on tonight's game. We'll hit the ground running here on Sports Scope. I'll be back here in 49 seconds, folks. Hello, Sports Scope followers. The program has seen tremendous growth since going 5 days a week. I just wanted to thank everybody for your cash contributions and sharing the program with friends and families. Just a reminder, if you want to contribute to the program, go to the Cash App, the cash sign, and Sports Scope. There are other ways to contribute to the program listed at the bottom of the screen. If you want to advertise on the program, go to sports, that is sports with an S, another S, scope, SKOPE, at gmail.com, just like it's listed at the bottom of the screen. Thank you and enjoy the program. All righty then. Okay. Before I get into this Deion thing, which is fabulous, trust me, it's great. Good stuff. Okay, tonight, Minnesota on the road, 0-1, going to play at the Eagles. Okay. Eagles, as I mentioned before, it's hard to have two dominant seasons. I know a lot of people are predicting that they're going to dominate and everything. It's hard to do that in the NFL. I know they dominated most of the season last year. I get that. But already this year, folks, I expect the Eagles to win tonight and cover that 6.5. Don't get me wrong. But the Eagles are already starting to get some injuries here. James Bradbury, get your eagle on is what, the guy's calling the game tonight. I can't remember his name now. It'll come to me later. Anyways, so you got guys like Nakobe Dean. James Bradbury's not going to be in there tonight. Let's see. But Minnesota's got Garrett Bradbury. I don't think there's any relation. But their center's out. Now, their left tackle's going to play. Their left tackle's going to play. Their center's out. So you got Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, the two Georgia guys, could clobber Kirk Cousins tonight. I think that the Minnesota will bounce back. They'll play better than they played last week. I think that they will have plus they had a safety out too. Remember Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, he left in free agency, and Reed Blankenship, the safety's out. So you're depleted 3 secondary players that was on last year's team if you count the 2. You still got Darius Slay's going to be on Justin Jefferson. Jefferson's going to get his, okay? He's going to get his. Had a pretty good game against them last year. But mind you, guys like Jordan Addison, rookie out of USC, had 40 yards and what do you have? 6 catches, 40 yards. Yeah, 4 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown here. So I think that they're going to score some. Minnesota will. This will be, of course, Minnesota's defense is terrible. So if you were just doing a fantasy on this game, I mean, obviously, DeAndre Swift, but Kenny Gainwell's not going to play tonight. Swift to get more carries. The trade that they got over from Detroit there. A.J. Brown, not a very good secondary for Minnesota either. Should have a good game. And Jalen Hurts, I expect him probably get 25 fantasy points tonight. I think Minnesota will probably cover, and they'll probably hit the over. I want to say the over is like 48 or 49 because I think Minnesota will get them some punch back here. Not unless they simply pickles knock whatchamacallit out of the game. I don't think they will. I don't think they will knock Cousins out. I think they're smart enough to figure this thing out. But I'll say this. Yeah, Cousins. So I actually took Cousins over 1.5 touchdowns. I think he'll throw a couple of touchdowns here. Yeah, something just popped up on my screen. I was just telling you guys about Andrew Luck. Now something popped up that he's coaching high school football. He'll be in college before it's over with. So Pickles thinks that they'll run the ball all night. They still got their offensive line in check. I watched that Kels documentary, the Kels brothers, and honestly, it was very boring. I think the guys, just because you play football, these documentarian people, I think they get too caught up in the whole family thing. It was all about Jason Kelce and not enough about Travis Kelce. And Jason's really talking about retirement and what's he want to do post-retirement. Too much film of the kids and stuff like that. Not enough football and all that stuff. Everybody thinks they can be a podcaster and a documentarian. And I think maybe they got their own money. It was terrible. It was boring. But I like Jason Kelce. Seems like a good guy. I like the mom, she's got the split jersey and everything. But and he came down to the last minute that he wanted to play. That he wanted to play puff piece writing. What Pickle says. Yeah, it just isn't. It didn't really get into it. The Kelce brother documentary on Amazon. I've watched it while I was preparing for today's program. So, but anyways, again, so like I said, like the Eagles tonight, like a lot of points from the Eagles defense. If you were taking their defense, I like their defense. Get a couple of turnovers there, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 sacks because Cousins not the fastest guy in the world, but I also expect that they're going to give up something on the offensive. Hawkinson's going to have a good game. I think Addison will have a good game. No, Linda, I do not think they can upset them. I mean, turnovers could happen. Jalen Hurts could get hurt. Anything can happen in the NFL. But I do think the Eagles are going to play well and go up 2-0. And Minnesota, as I predicted, they're not going to be a playoff team. They can't stop a nosebleed. I cannot believe they got beat by Tampa in week 1 at home, maybe down in Tampa when it's 150-degree humidity level. But I do think that I think the Eagles played pretty well tonight, although they will give up some points. Again, their secondary is not what it was before. A lot of injuries. Guys like T.J. Hawkinson and particularly Jordan Addison, the rookie out of USC, should have a pretty good night tonight and score some touchdowns. That being said, I don't know, maybe 41-17 Eagles, maybe not 41, maybe 34-17 or something like that. Depends on. They didn't look too good last week. I think the Eagles will play better though. I think that because it's really pretty out there tonight, 75 degrees. If Jamie's there, I'm sure he's having a good time. Linda, the old defensive coordinator, is the Vikings defensive coordinator. Yeah, well, that's Brian Flores from the former Patriots defensive coordinator is their not let he may have worked for the Eagles back in the day, but what I know, he used to work with the Patriots. Remember, he was the Dolphins. He's a good defensive coordinator, but the thing is, they don't have any personnel at Minnesota. That's my issue, Linda, with that Minnesota team. But Christian Darrisaw is active left tackle for the Vikings. You know, if this guy was out, plus their Bradbury, the Vikings center, I mean, they'll just go get freaking demolished. But he is going to play, and they do have the backup in there. You're probably going to get some sacks up the middle. From Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, the two Georgia guys. Okay, so going back to fantasy, I'm going to pivot. Oh, thank you, Linda. Appreciate it. I'm going to pivot to this Deion Sanders story, Linda, if you want to hang around. This is interesting. Tell Mac about this. Okay, so Deion Sanders and this team, the ratings are out of this world. We've talked about this for days. They made a ton of money for the Colorado business establishments. They are the best, the most expensive ticket in college football. But here's my thing. They're also turning into the biggest villains. Colorado's home opener versus Nebraska last week made the city of Boulder an estimated $18 million, according to On3.com. The prime effect is real. But they are turning into villains like the 80s Miami Hurricanes team. For those of you who have not been around, the Hurricanes were Jimmy Johnson encouraged the players to be themselves. He encouraged the players to be super cocky and rambunctious and go over the top. They wore the Miami Hurricanes wore army fatigues to games. They were loud. They were boisterous. They had rappers at the practices. Luke from the Tula Crew. There's documentary made about the U. It's called the U, right? The 30 for 30. You had the two. So Deion has he's had some kind of beef with both of the coaches. He's had some kind of setback. Okay, let's go back to week one, right? Let's go back to week one with, who was it? With TCU, right? So you go back to week one with TCU, and Deion says that Schroeder, his son, says that Kendall Briles, the offensive coordinator, shunned him at a recruiting visit. This is personal, in Deion's voice, Corey. He says, this is personal. So they'd had a little beef about that. I also find out that Deion was passed over for Sonny Dykes for the TCU job while he was still at Jackson State. Deion didn't say publicly that irritated him, but it was brought up. Okay, it was brought up. All right. So last week in the Nebraska game, Schroeder Sanders says that he heard that Matt Rule, the newly acquired head coach of the Nebraska Cornhuskers, was talking about Deion and what did he say? He said on the podcast, I couldn't find the soundbite, but he supposedly said and I believe it because it was wrote up in multiple articles, that he wants his to be about the kids. Matt Rule wants Nebraska to be about the kids, not about him. He's flashy. He's, boisterous. That's Deion. Deion's he's taken everything by surprise. He talks big. He's brash. So then during the warm-ups, Schroeder says that the Nebraska team was at the middle in the middle field with the Buffaloes. I'll play you the soundbite here. Said it was very disrespectful Matt Rule has a explains what happened here, but let's hold on. Okay, that's Matt Rule. Okay, here is Schroeder Sanders. So Schroeder Sanders explains why he got mad and said this thing's personal. This is Schroeder. This is his son. This is his son. But this stuff is entertaining, though. Listen to this. This is Schroeder Sanders after Nebraska win. Talking about disrespect.
Nebraska-Colorado rivalry. I know your coach had told you all week it was personal. Were you guys able to really buy into this rivalry? What did it feel like out there?
It was extremely personal. We go out there, warm up. You got the head coach for the other team trying to stand in the middle of the buff. Like, it's okay if like, a couple players do it. It's fine, you know. Like, just enjoy the scenery. But when you got the whole team trying to disrespect it, and I'm not going for that at all. So I went in there and disrupted it. So they knew off rip, like, nah, the Buffaloes mean a lot to me. And personally, that's what I was saying pregame. And that's when I knew it was just extreme disrespect. And that's why it was the coach said a lot of things about my pops, about the program, but now that he want to act nice, I don't respect that, because you hating on another man, you shouldn't do that. So it was just all respect was gone for them in their program. Now I like playing against their DC, I like playing against them, but the respect level it ain't there because you disrespected us first.
Then another player gets involved. Listen up.
What he said pretty much, yeah. Like when he told us it personal, we did our homework and seen why he meant that, why he said that. But yeah, it was a lot of disrespect going on. I remember pregame, we was in the middle huddling up. They punted the ball into almost hit our head coach in the head. So it's like, yeah, it's personal after that. Like we wanted to run the score for real. We ain't do what we really supposed to do.
So you can see Deion's encouraging all this. Okay, so this is what Matt Rule explains what happened in pregame, the head coach for Nebraska. I know y'all can't hear the question, but I'm just explaining it to you. You'll hear better.
Every stadium we go there, we pray for blessing. When they came in, I asked them if they wanted. I asked Shedeur if he wanted to pray with us. You know, I mean, I pray over every. You know, I'm a public official, and I can have my own faith. I say pray. We take a moment of team, like, you know, it's not. We have Muslim guys, we have non-believers. We just take a moment as a team and just. I want that field to be safe for everybody. You know, at the end of the game, no one's going to tell me who I am. You know, at the end of that game, they told me, hey, we're going to run right off the field. They're going to storm the field. I said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't care if I get beaten up by a mob. I'm running across that field, and I'm shaking Coach Sanders' hand. So, no, people can say, when you're losing, people are going to say all kinds of things about you. I know exactly who I am. I know exactly who I am. And I'm coaching this team with class, and I'm not changing. And I went over there and I shook that man's hand. I whispered in his ear, and I never disrespected an opponent a day in my life and never will.
So he said they were just praying at the middle of the field so nobody gets injured. That's kind of that's a pretty normal thing to do. So that was last week. I told you about the week before last in week one, the beef there with the coordinator. So now we got some smack talk. This week, they got an in-state rivalry game against the Colorado State football team, and I will play you that here in just a second, as soon as I get it popped up here on my Twitter. If I can, once I had to scan down here. Interesting stuff here. Okay, so here is Colorado head football coach Jay Norvell criticizing Colorado's Deion Sanders. Listen.
I told them I took my hat off, and I sat down with ESPN today, and I don't care if they hear it in Boulder. I told them I took my hat off, and I took my glasses off, and I said, when I talk to grown-ups, I take my hat and my glasses off. That's what my mother taught me. So I sat down with ESPN. So, yeah, Colorado, Jay criticizes Deion Sanders for not taking his hat and sunglasses off while he's doing interviews. He's got the sunglasses, got the very Mike Tyson looking thing. I think he's just being himself. He's having a fun. He's really enjoying this. So here's Deion's response now that it got back to him. Okay, here's Deion's response in practice today.
All we do is, yes, sir. I'm minding my own business, watching some film, trying to get ready.
Trying to get out here and be the best coach I can be. And I look up and I read some bull junk that Dan said about us. Talk to us. Once again, why would you want to talk about us when we don't talk about nobody? All we do is go out here, work our butts up, and do our job on Saturday. But when they give us ammunition, they unmessed around and made it what? It was just going to be a good game. They unmessed around and made it personal. It was going to be a great test, a battle of Colorado, but they unmessed around and made it personal. You'll have to the last security guard.
So he said they made it what? And the team's like personal. So Deion's not being entirely truthful there. He was saying that it was personal with the TCU coach and not ignoring his son Schroeder. This is very Michael Jordan. If you guys watched the Last Dance documentary, Jordan was looking for something all 82. He'd make it up if he had to or embellish it. He would embellish it to keep him motivated. Remember when he was saying, people were saying Clyde was on my level and all this, and this was going to be a close series. Then he dogged out Clyde Drexler and all that. But all that being said, he's different. He's jumping in this transfer portal on steroids. That's all legal. He's taking that. He's got a different style here. Talks a lot more than any other coach. But check this out, folks. They're must-see TV. Sports, college football, NFL, they all need a villain. You either love them or you hate them. I still love them, but I understand where, with college football, everybody's like, compliment. It's the same old normal compliment the opponent. But he's kind of like a Steve Spurrier, except even more like a Jimmy Johnson. Spurrier would always jab at Tennessee. You can't spell citrus without a U and a T, which means that was the game that the loser of the SEC, the team that didn't make the SEC championship game but got close, like Tennessee, that's the one that they went to because Florida would always beat Tennessee in that game. But like I said, this is going to be a Colorado. All that being said, Deion has earned his money that Colorado's paying him. I was reading this from the Bleacher Report today. Colorado has surpassed Ohio State for the most for college football's most expensive ticket, $512. $512 for the Colorado football. It's the most. Think about it. This team was 1-11 last year, a dumpster fire. And two games going into the third game of the season, the very first season, Colorado has surpassed Ohio State. $512 for the most expensive ticket in college football. What Tupac say there, Pickles, I'm still the or Corey, I'm still the thug that you love to hate. And that brash Jimmy Johnson style. Remember, he went to Florida State. They were the rival to Miami back in the late 80s, the mid to late 80s. And so he's used to this back and forth. With Nick Saban in, he wins and everything. There was a little bit of back and forth between Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban, but Deion's looking for every single week. And people hate it when I use this term. The purists don't, because they don't want sports to get caught up with. They don't want sports to get caught up with wrestling or anything of that. But the truth of the matter is, this is entertainment. It's very competitive. People dedicate their life to, and all that. I think this sport was lacking this type of personality. It was getting very regional. Colin Cowherd would criticize it's just regional. Very gentlemanlike. You don't want to give no bulletin board material. And Deion says, no, bleep that. I'm going to give you all the bulletin board material. And I'm going to take your stuff, even if I got to exaggerate it, I'm going to make it bulletin board material. It's great for ratings. There's more money. That stadium's full. It's the most expensive ticket in America right now in college football. $500. I wouldn't pay that. But, listen, folks. Saturday, the University of Tennessee plays Florida. We'll talk about that game tomorrow with Carlos Mad New Yorker Chavez. Tennessee's favored. Florida's already lost to Utah. Florida lost 6-7 games last year. Second-year coach, University of Florida, Billy Napier. Billy Napier is on the hot seat, okay? I think there's a good chance that Billy Napier could get fired, okay? Deion Sanders still has a grudge. He says, when somebody asks him what school did he claim, he says, listen, I graduated from a so-and-so HBC school, because he didn't graduate at Florida State. So he didn't even claim Florida State. He's still a little irritated that he didn't get that job at Florida State. What's Florida State's one of their biggest rivalries is Florida. This would be bad for Tennessee fans and Georgia fans, but there's a good chance that towards the end of the season that he is hired as the head coach of the University of Florida, and he wants to come down south and get all these recruits down here in the middle of the best recruiting state out there, the Florida. That would be really crazy, because then you're playing against Alabama, Tennessee, Miami, University, Florida State, and then that's going to pump more life into the college game. I think that is a more than a good. Nobody's talking about that. That is a more than likely chance that happens, folks. In the D-line, Pickle says he's bringing the WWE. He's saying now. Here's the backlash to that the players get too much into it. The Sun is saying it's personal. The other players saying it's personal. You don't want any brawls. College football, they're very strict about the unsportsmanlike conduct and everything. You don't want to get to that point. You don't want to get it to that point, where players are getting suspended. You don't want it to get – that's my only concern. And I'm sure he's probably – when the cameras go off, he's probably got these kids by the side. Listen, guys, let's not fight out there. And then Jimmy Johnson said that in his book. Don't tone anybody on the field. We'll brag and everything in the end zone. You can be boisterous all you want to. I'm talking about the Hurricanes teams. We can wear the fatigues down here. And Jimmy basically was just saying, we're just trying to keep ourselves hyped up for the game. And that's the sense I get from Deion. That's the sense I get from Deion and Bobby Bowden and everybody. But it right now, I think it's must-see TV. I think the sport was lacking Deion Sanders. And as the world turns in Colorado, for the record, they're 27.5-point favorites against Colorado State, and they can put 50 on Colorado State. They will. So I will be watching. I'll probably record that game because I got to work Saturday. I'm recording a few games. But next week, they play Oregon. At Oregon. Now, that'll be a huge game. Don't be surprised if Deion doesn't find some kind of issue he has with Oregon or one of the coaches from Oregon. So this is turning into the Last Dance type of thing, folks. But this time he said something. The Colorado State coach said something about him. So now you're getting the back and forth. I think it's fun. I just hope that the players don't overreact on the field and nobody gets hurt. Yeah, that will be at Oregon. Pickles. I'm curious about that point spread. I might take Colorado and the points. It depends on the injuries, but the Ducks are very good. They're a loaded team, a ranked team. Big win last week at Texas Tech. They can play with anybody, and they're very tough to beat at home. But he will have them ready, and I cannot wait to see that game. And apparently, the rest of the country's hyped up about it as well. Okay, so let's talk some fantasy football. This is the first. I'll be honest with you. I'm a little rusty. I used to do the first 2 years of the program on Sunday. I used to do a fantasy show every Sunday in the morning, and then I would come later on that afternoon and do the regular show. I'm a little rusty, so just kind of bear with me. What I like to look for in fantasy, whether you're doing daily fantasy or you're doing draft fantasy. Even if you got draft fantasy, you got players that you have drafted. You have players that you have on the bench, okay, that you drafted as well. And my philosophy is if you got like a mega star player that's like the top receiver in the league, you play him every week. Justin Jefferson, even against Darius Slay, you play him every week. If you had LaDainian Tomlinson back in the day, Pickles, you play him every week. Saquon Barkley, the Giants, Linda, if you're still out there, coming off of a 40-point loss. They're going on the road at Arizona. Saquon Barkley is going to get a lot of drop downs. You play Saquon every single week, Pickles. You play Barkley. If Cooper Kupp was back, you would play him every week, okay? Guys like Derrick Henry is going to have a good game this week. I still play him every week, you know. Keenan Allen, top quarterbacks, Justin Herbert, Pat Mahomes, Kelsey's hurt. But anyway, so that's my philosophy. Another philosophy is you really want to look for – you want to scout because daily's more I think it's more popular now than draft because draft stuff is just, you know, I mean, you know, your guys gets hurt and you get 2 or 3 bad injuries and then you're out of it for the year. That's why I play daily, you know. But my thing is you want to look at the opposition. How does the opposition, are they bad against the run? Do they have defensive linemen out? One of my favorites is, do they have cornerbacks out? Like J.C. Horn, for example. He's not going to play Monday night against J.C. Horn, the cornerback from Carolina Panthers. He's not going to play against the Saints on Monday night. That opens it up for Chris Olave. I was telling my dad, the Titans are bad still secondary. Watch out for Chris Olave, who got about 8 catches, 110 yards against the Titans. That's about 18 points in fantasy. Okay. So you got to look at stuff like that. It's a passing lead. Obviously the dual running backs, the rushing running backs and the pass catching running backs are good. But also you got to look at who's throwing the ball. What's the chemistry level of the quarterback and the wide receiver? Is it just a guy like a Justin Fields and DJ Moore? They both got big names, but they just started with each other. Okay. So that is some of the basics per se. But another thing I like to look at, if you're playing ball with receivers and tight ends, you got to know the weather. For example, that Cleveland game was horrible last week. It was a monsoon up there. They're going to bounce back 82 yards passing last week. For all you Jamar Chase owners, that was a rough game. You got to watch the weather. So if it's a downpour, you got to be careful. Okay, so that is a good transition. Okay, for example, Jacksonville. Jacksonville's at home against Kansas City. You got two really good quarterbacks there. Okay. We're not sure about Jason Kels, but you got Mahomes there. Okay. You've got some off receivers there for Kansas City, but you also got an 80% chance of storms throughout the game. That's why I would probably monitor that game. Now today's Thursday night, but I would look at the weather. If I had to play that game now, I wouldn't use anybody because it's supposed to be really bad thunderstorms throughout the whole time of the game, which is 1 o'clock Eastern down there in Jacksonville. It's not a daily game I would want to look at, but I would want to check it all the way up to the last minute, because what you do is you go online and do the hour by hour pickles. You do the hour by hour and make sure you might be able to get a good matchup. Okay. Calvin Ridley had a great opening game. I like Christian Kirk in that game. ETN in that game. The running backs, if you wanted to deal the running back, obviously the other running back there, Clyde Edwards-Helaire or McKinnon, they kind of got a running back by committee. That's why I'm not really sure about the Kansas City players in that particular game. When you have downpours like that, it's going to keep the ball's going to slip out of their hands. The score is going to be lower. Pacheco. So he's more of a downhill runner guy. So that's something you really have to monitor when you're doing daily, and just not even willfully not thinking. Now, Buffalo, I do like that game. Okay, Josh Allen. Okay, they're at home against the Raiders. Their defense is going to be a tick off, which that's going to open it up for your Devontae Adamses of the world. Okay, Jacoby Myers of the world. That's the receivers for because that defense is going to be just a little bit off for Buffalo. Buffalo played Monday night. Okay, they played Monday night, and the defenses are usually off. Okay, so that helps the opposing offenses. Okay, Stephon Diggs is a good player. Obviously, Gabe Davis. Okay, it's Kincaid. Kincaid he had 4 catches last week, by the way. That Dalton Kincaid's a tight end, Dawson Knox as well. But Kincaid, I can see a potential breakout game for Kincaid as a 1-2 there with the Josh Allen. Allen's got a lot of criticism this week. He had 2 fumbles? And I know he had 3 picks that cost him the game. He's been criticized on Get Up. I've criticized him before. Jason Whitlock's criticized. So I expect Josh Allen to have a really big game. Probably run for about 40 yards, touchdown, probably throw for 2. They're 8-point favorites. I may actually take that 8 points. And, hey, the Raiders are 1-0. They've got Jimmy Garoppolo. Okay? They've got Jimmy Garoppolo. So that is a good fantasy game. And by the way, Buffalo, 40% chance of light rain around kickoff, then it clears out. Okay? Cincinnati, also about 30% at kickoff. Cincinnati's playing Baltimore. You said, well, Baltimore's got a big-time defense. Baltimore's got more injuries on their defense, folks. Marlon Humphrey's out. J.K. Dobbins is injured there for the Ravens there. Cincinnati, another team, humiliated last week, 24-3. They're at home. The weather's going to be good most of the game. Baltimore's got pass rushing issues for their standards. Okay, Jamar Chase, big bounce back. Their lead corner being out, big bounce back game for potentially for him. He always has a good game against these guys. So I can see him. The Ravens, not really sure. You got to keep an eye on Mark Andrews. You're going to have to Marcus Williams. Their safety's out. So their center, they're 1-0, and now Zay. So that particular game, you might want to look at Chase in that particular game. You might want to look at Zay Flowers in that particular game. That's the second game. He had a really good game. The first game, Zay Flowers, wide receiver there from Baltimore with Lamar Jackson. Cincinnati's replacing their cornerbacks. They've replaced the safety. They are not as good on the back end. Lamar Jackson's going to have a pretty good game there against them because there's some good matchups there that he can exploit. He knows he's going to have to throw that ball, okay? And so, and I mentioned the Rams last week, okay? You wouldn't think you would not think, folks, that a game that is a rival game will potentially be high scoring. But Christian McCaffrey, over 150-something yards against the Steelers last week, 94, over 100 and a touchdown the first game he played against the Rams. The Rams defense is worse now than it was then. Yeah, they look pretty good against Seattle last week with their offensive line out, okay? But Christian McCaffrey is one of the better plays of the week here. And I know he's, expensive. I think here in FanDuel, which is pretty much close to DraftKings, the numbers are a little different, but he's 9,500 in FanDuel. He's the top running back here. Had 24.5 points in FanDuel, which is really good last week here. Look for him to get catches and a big rushing game here. Very lopsided matchup, but I'll say this. I didn't expect the offense to be that smooth for the Rams last week either. When they put 30 points up on Seattle last week, guys like Tutu Atwell. Okay, so that is a very good play, especially between. See, Deebo Samuel didn't get his. Brandon Ayuk, big game last week, 2 touchdowns. Look for Deebo Samuel. Look for Christian McCaffrey to have his there. Possible game that he had last week. Now it's McVay versus Shanahan. These guys work together. So, we'll see how it works. I didn't see any problems in San Francisco nor L.A. The game's played in L.A. No problems with weather there. As far as weather for everybody, let me double check. Let me swing back around. Of course, I didn't mention teams that are in domes. Arizona's no issue there. Dallas has got a retractable roof. Atlanta's playing Green Bay in a dome. There is a 60% chance of rain in Tampa. Justin Fields could be a really good play there. Could be a good play. DJ Moore could be a good play, but watch the weather in Tampa. Tampa plays Chicago at Tampa. But it's a 60% chance of rain. You got to keep an eye out for that. Watch the hourly for that particular game. But why would DJ Moore? Well, for one thing, they paid him a lot of money and made a big move to get him. He's going to be targeted more. Plus, he knows Tampa because he played in that division for years against Tampa. Okay, so he's familiar with the defense. He should have a pretty good game. Plus, their secondary is not that good. He should have a good game, even if they throw him something, short. Foxborough, Massachusetts, it was a hellacious storm last week. Not this week. Clear. They play Miami. Okay, they play now. Tua's always had a good game against. Always played pretty well against Bill Belichick and this team. And it's going to be great weather. It's early in the season. I expect Waddle only 70 yards. Huge game for Tyreek Hill last week. I think Waddle will have the big game this week for for that Miami team. And on the other side, I don't know if I'd touch anybody. I don't believe in Mac Jones. You know, I don't know if I'd touch anybody on that other side, Pickles. Denver, it's clear in Denver here. So let me look and see what that game, who was in that particular game against Denver here. Let's see. Yeah, Denver. Denver against the Commanders there. I may take that Commanders defense. Now, Jerry Jeudy's supposed to be back, but, you know, that Commanders defense is much better. That would be a play for them. That's a kind of a lower scoring game here, but I don't know if I would touch that. But, you know, Anthony Richardson, dude, man, that guy had 21, almost 22 fantasy points last week. That'll be an interesting game. He's playing against Houston, who's got C.J. Stroud there. But Richardson's going to be hard to defend. He's only 7,500 on FanDuel. Keep an eye out for him because he's a rookie, but he's getting a lot of rushing yards, folks. 40 rushing yards. He passed for a touch, ran for one. I mean, that is pretty good. That is pretty good. That element of surprise Shane Steichen has. Keep an eye out on that game as well. One particular game that people don't think that it's got good matchups, but it really does. Okay, and I'm going to open this up real quick and tell you. Like my team, for instance. Okay, this is a possible lineup. Okay, Tennessee secondary was around 30th to 32nd last year. Okay, they were around 30th. They're about 19th right now, according to FanDuel. All right, Justin Herbert didn't have any touchdowns. Had close to 300 yards last year. Didn't have his left tackle. They're fully healthy, coming off of a loss. Scored 31 points, still lost. Okay, they're coming east for an early start time here in Nashville to play against the Titans. All right. I expect him to have about 350 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I expect either Mike Williams, who's a little bit quicker. I love Keenan Allen. He's your volume guy. But Mike Williams is a little bit quicker. He went down for a few minutes, but he came back. And Mike Williams is, like, for example, 6,700 against these cornerbacks. 31st is what FanDuel is saying. I knew that before I even looked at it. I think Mike Williams will have a good game. Probably 18 to 20 fantasy points against now he only had 7 last week, but against Tennessee, Christian Fulton might not play. Even if he does, I expect these receivers to have a good game. Chris Olave, I mentioned that. 6 catches, 110 over Tennessee last week in that loss there. So that they're just bad in that secondary, and they're good against the run. So you're going to have Herbert off script a lot, throwing off the run, and he's going to make some big plays. On the flip side, Derrick Henry, man, I made some notes about Henry. 4 catches, 50-something yards against this team last year, and he had 100 yards and a touchdown against this team last year. Yeah, 100 yards, touchdown, 4 for 59. He's up there. I have him and McCaffrey together. I don't normally do that, but I think there's probably 50 points between those two. Derrick Henry made the comment this week in a press conference saying, hey, I want to get the ball more in the flat. I like it. And I agree. I've been telling people this around town. This guy, you got to get him the ball 4 or 5 times in the flat because that is a refrigerator running downhill. He is hard to tackle. He's going to be a great play. Defenses are a tick off when they come east. When they come east on these early start times, these West Coast teams, when they're starting these games early like this, just the same thing with Jabbar Gibbs, the rookie, very fast speedster, extra time off, Pickles. He's the 5,300 Detroit Lion here, playing against Seattle. Playing against that Seattle in an early start time. I think he's going to be one of the killer players of the week here, the dual threat guy as well. So like I said, I got guys like Mike Williams, Justin Herbert, Henry, 83, 95 for Christian McCaffrey. I know that's steep, but I do think he's going to have a good game. And Rondale Moore, now he's a very cheap player. This is wide receiver from Arizona. He's more of an all-purpose type of gadget guy. I think that he's going to get some short passes there. I do think that on the other side, though, they're playing the Giants. The Giants are going to play well. But Arizona's probably the worst team in football this year. And like I said, he caught 3 of 3 targets, 33 yards, and he had 12 yards rushing on 2 carries. He's getting the ball. Rondale Moore, kind of a dual threat guy with what's his name, Comer or whatever, James Conner, who's always hurt. Poor guy. He's got it. Cancer. He gets hurt all the time, but at least he's still in the NFL running back for Arizona. So, yeah. So, players like him, Rondale Moore. I mentioned DJ Moore already against Tampa. And Cole Kmet on the other side here also got a good matchup against Tampa. And, of course, Dallas defense. I mean, Zach Wilson's playing. I mean, they had a shutout 40-0 last week. Zach Wilson. The Jets played Monday night, big emotional game. Dallas at home, one of the fastest defenses in the NFL. I like Dallas as one of the better defenses to play in this particular lineup here. Okay, other potential defenses while I'm talking about it. I mentioned before Washington, Denver. I'm not real sure about Denver. I'm just not real sure. I like this Commanders front seven against these guys. Let me see. There was a few others here I mentioned. The Lions defense against. Listen, man. The Geno Smith, I'm starting to believe he is just a one-hit wonder. They've got an upgraded secondary and a mean pass rush in Detroit, and they are going to be stacked to the right. I've got Jeremy Ballrich coming in from Detroit, coming in on Tuesday. I expect them now. Seattle will play better. They'll play better, but mind you, Detroit's had extra time to rest. They're really wanting to take the bull by the horns and jump off in a big league in this division. Now, of course, Green Bay won. Chicago lost. Okay. So they feel like this is probably a 2-team race. Minnesota lost. Going to lose again tonight, in my opinion. So I think that defense is going to play well. I think that defense is going to play well for Detroit. I think Jabari Gibbs will have a good game for Detroit. And not to mention Amon St. Brown as well. Okay. Yeah, you could say DK Metcalf will probably get his in that particular game because they're going to be down and they're going to need but check this out. They got a new left tackle at Seattle. Jason Peters, 40-year-old Jason Peters, Leno, their left tackle's out. So I expect Detroit to play well. I expect them to play well. I expect them to run the ball well and have a good game in that particular game as well. And typically, folks, you like to take teams that have good matchups that are playing out of division. Okay, and I'll mention all these other games, mainly the games that I like to play in daily. You could do others, but I like to play the 1 o'clock Eastern to 3 o'clock Eastern type of games. And I just mentioned the ones in those particular time zones. Now, of course, Browns at the Steelers. Steelers got all kinds of injuries already. Injuries are starting to mount for the Steelers. Cameron Hayward's going to be out for a while for the Steelers. Patrick Peterson, he's getting older. He was getting killed by Brandon Ayuk. I expect Amari Cooper to have a good game. I expect the Browns defense to have a good game. And I mentioned that about the Saints. I expect Chris Olave against and that Saints defense to have a good game. Although I do think Bryce Young is coming along pretty good for a guy who's played in one game. Okay. I'm not too sure about the Arizona game Atlanta and Green Bay. Yeah. I like the way Jordan Love played last week. Atlanta's defense is pretty good. They may be a play this week because Jones hasn't practiced all week, Aaron Jones. Christian Watson's out, and Dobbs is banged up again. So the injuries are starting to mount for Green Bay, even though they play good. But I didn't like the way that their quarterback played either, and Green Bay's defense is playing pretty well, and Atlanta's defense is playing pretty well. So that could be a 21-18 game. It's not the best, not the sexiest fantasy matchup in the world. But when you've got a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo playing at Buffalo and Josh Allen, Clearweather, you got the better defense, and Buffalo played overtime Monday night, playing on a short week. That could be a shootout type of game. Okay, Buffalo and Vegas. You got Devontae Adams there. You got Jacoby Myers there, and of course, I mentioned Peter Gabriel Davis, and Peter Gabriel's like a singer, but call him that. Gabriel Davis, Stephon Diggs. So that's going to be one. Those are when you're doing daily. Those are the ones you kind of want to milk. I wish I picked and choose between Miami and the Chargers last week. I should have leaned more into that. But, and like I said, there's juicy matches up between Tennessee and 2-0-1 teams in that Chargers. I think Tennessee will probably win that game. But the Chargers, they got better matchups. They just don't have the coaching, and they're on the road. This coach can screw up a free meal, but there's really good matchups there. And like I said, that Kansas City game, you just got to watch the weather situation. You're just going to have to watch. I don't know, maybe Sky Moore, somebody like that. Maybe Kadarius Toney snaps out of his slump. But you got to really monitor, like I said, on the other side, Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, and, of course, ETN on that one. So, and these games that are defensive, like the Jets and Cowboys, take both defenses, Commanders, Broncos, take both defenses. Colts, Texans, I mean, maybe Richardson. I don't think Stroud's that much of a guy that will is not going to take off here. But Fields as a whole is a player here. Now, Lamar Jackson, 7,600. I do expect him to have a pretty good game as well. So those are my fantasy. Like I said, I gave you my one particular lineup that I may use. Again, you always want to check. You always want to check the weather just before the game, and you want to check 11:30 Eastern, 10:30 Central. Last-minute scratches. If you have a leading corner, that is a last-minute scratch. If you have a left tackle or center, that is a last-minute scratch. Then you want to go opposite and go, okay, let me get that receiver, the number one receiver against that leading corner. Let me get that defense against that, if the defense is good, against that offensive line or something like that. Those are little tips there for this particular week in the fantasy world here. Now, tomorrow, folks, I'll be back here with Carlos, Man New Yorker Shop. We'll talk some of these games. We'll guess on some of these games. I'll give you my prediction. I'll give you my prediction of Tennessee, Florida. That's a big college game tomorrow. Tennessee Chargers. One day. Pickle says inactives are critical for fantasy. Yeah, so stuff like that. I'll have a little bit more structured fantasy set up next week. It's the first day doing it in a long time. but I love talking fan. Maybe I'll throw in a few picks on Thursday, but either way, tomorrow, like I said, we'll be breaking down the 5 biggest games of the week, and we'll talk about that, and I'll get his take on Rodgers going down and the Giants getting blown out 40-0. So if you guys like the show, please share the show. I'll be back tomorrow again with Carlos Madden, New Yorker Chavez, same time, same place, here on Sports Scope.
Welcome to Sports Scope, the most influential sport.